This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to episode 10 of this Dark Souls Easy Mode walkthrough. And what we are trying to do in this walkthrough is to minimize the difficulty and the risk of playing Dark Souls by using a sorcerer build that has leveled up its intelligence as much as possible, as early as possible, to have a lot of offensive firepower. And at the same time, we are using some specific strategies to make sure that the game is not as punishing as it can be for first time players. So, this is going to be a little bit of a different episode from the most recent episodes from the last 2 or 3 episodes. So let me give you guys fair warning about that. I have done a lot of editing, and I have removed all of the transitions from bonfire to bonfire. There is also going to be a little bit of farming in this episode, and I'm only going to show one farming run. I've edited out the other runs because once you've seen a farming run, you essentially have seen it all. But I just wanted to let you guys know up front that this is going to be a little bit of a different type of an episode. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what is happening on screen, because I know that my viewers sometimes get annoyed when the commentary is has nothing to do with what's happening on screen. So at the beginning of this episode, we used the souls that we got from Ornstein and Smo, and we leveled up a little bit. And what we're trying to do with this build is take our intelligence up to 50 and our strength to 16 and our dexterity to 12, and then we are going to start increasing the endurance and the vitality. So we leveled up, and then we also gave the Lord Vessel to Winevere. And Winevere told us a tale, and it's all related to lore. And again, guys, if you want to know more about the lore, I'm not going to be talking about the lore at all in this walkthrough. I have a lore specific, a walkthrough entirely dedicated to lore if you're interested in that. So feel free to check that out on my channel. All right, so with the Lord Vessel, I've come back to Firelink Shrine. And I've talked to one of the two primordial serpents that some in the community like to call beanpoles. But I've talked to one of the primordial serpents, and that is the primordial serpent Frampt. And by talking to Frampt and by answering yes to his questions, by essentially agreeing to let him be our mentor and our tutor and to point the way, by buying his view for what's happening in the Dark Souls world, and by placing the Lord Vessel at his command, or at his urging, we are essentially going to exclude the other serpent's plotline from the game. So the other serpent is Kath, the Dark Serpent Kath, and Kath will show up after you have defeated the four kings, but only if you have not placed the Lord Vessel prior. So if for first-time players, I would actually recommend to follow Frampt's guiding and to place the Lord Vessel at his urging. And the reason is that Frampt can act a little bit like a bank. And by the way, you see that when we place the Lord Vessel, this unlocks new areas of the game. And the way Frampt explained it, those areas are the homes of the keepers of other great shards or sections of Lord Souls, or Lord Souls themselves. And in order for us to be able to access Win and take his place, we must give those Lord souls to the Lord vessel. We must satiate the Lord vessel with their souls. So this is a milestone in the game. We've unlocked different areas, and we've been giving a new objective, which is to obtain the Lord souls and bring them back to the Lord vessel. But as I was saying, the reason I recommend the first time players follow Frampt's plotline is because he is actually relatively useful, regardless of what you think of him from a lore standpoint as an NPC. He acts a little bit like a bank, and you could see from his menu options that you can feed him items. So we are going to feed him these coins that we received from the mimics in Anor Londo, and you see that we get a decent amount of souls when we feed him coins. Now you can feed him other items in your inventory as well, and for most items he's not going to give you a lot of souls, so it's not really that useful. But the other option that you saw on on the screen that popped up when we talked to him, the option screen, was that we could feed him upgrade material. And you see me checking my inventory here of shards, large shards, chunks, and slabs. And Frampt will take upgrade material and he will break it down into its prior components. So for example, if you feed Frampt a titanite chunk, he will give you large titanite shards. If you feed him a large shard, he will give you titanite shards. If you feed him color chunks, if you feed him a blue, a red, or a white chunk, he will break that into 5 green shards. And if you feed him a green shard, he will break that into 5 titanite shards. So that's very, very useful, especially if you need to upgrade a lot of equipment in the armor, because you're able to buy large shards, for example. And if you follow Frampt's plotline, you can you can farm some shards and you can break those up into titanite shards, and you can have lots and lots of titanite shards that you can use to upgrade your equipment. Now, farming in Dark Souls is a little bit of a requirement, and that's because the chunks are not available from any merchant. They must be farmed. So that actually limits the number of items that you can upgrade, because you're going to be forced to do a lot of farming in order to upgrade your equipment. And slabs, which allow you to increase your armor or your equipment to upgrade it to its fullest level, is incredibly rare. And even if you farm for hours, you are not going to be getting a lot of slabs. So slabs are very, very rare. So you have to be a little bit judicious as far as what it is that you're going to upgrade, just because chunks and especially slabs are rare and must be farmed for the most part. You get 1 or 2 slabs of each color, sort of from the as drops from the game or as drops from enemies. But if you want more, especially if you want to get normal slabs, you do have to farm from them, and they're a very, very rare drop. All right, so one thing that I haven't said in this episode is that we are going to be crafting a weapon, an elemental weapon. And when I was making this video, when I was reviewing the footage, I was actually trying to figure out, okay, do I want to keep this video in my walkthrough, or do I want to completely just omit it, not show it and just tell you guys what I did. But at the end, I decided that for completeness sakes, that I would show it. Again, I've done a little bit of editing, so hopefully this is less boring and a little bit more instructional. And one of the reasons I decided to keep it was because I was going to show the upgrade mechanism. The other reason I decided to keep the video is because I'm going to show you guys my favorite method of farming. And if this looks familiar, it is because it's essentially the same thing that I did on the preview trailer for this walkthrough. In that case, I was using a test character that was actually higher level than Esmeralda is right now. But at this point, Esmeralda has a ton of offensive firepower, and you could see that farming the Royal Sentinels and the Silver Knight is very, very easy using a combination of Homing Soul Mass and Soul Spear. And for these Sentinels, you just need to get underneath them, or excuse me, in between their legs and shoot, and that's all they wrote. And by the way, those Royal Sentinels do drop Titanite chunks every once in a while. Alright, so I'm going to continue the farming here, and now I'm going to take out the Royal Sentinels. And these two you can take out without them even noticing that you're around. Because Soul Spear locks on at a pretty long range. And now we're going to go talk to the giant blacksmith. And so anyway, those were the two reasons why I decided to keep this episode. I guess three reasons why I decided to keep this episode is one, I wanted you guys to see more or less the entire walkthrough. Second, for those that are new, I wanted to explain the upgrade mechanism, and I also wanted to show you my favorite farming method, which is to farm here, from the bonfire of the Chamber of the Princes, and to take out the Sentinels. All right, and I'm also gonna take out these Batwing demons with Homing Soul Mass, and I'm gonna show you how incredibly easy it is. And I'm just going to cast Homing Soul Mass, and that just takes out the Bat demons immediately. Again, you don't even have to lock on. As soon as you get close enough, Homing Soul Mass will just auto-detect the target and fire. I mean, you can lock on if you want, but there you saw that I didn't even have to lock on. And I could have used a range attack on this enemy too. And there happens to be a Titanite chunk here. So let me talk a little bit about the upgrade equipment, or the upgrade mechanism. And I am going to be making an elemental weapon in this episode. And the reason I want to make an elemental weapon is because as a magic user, we are strictly dealing magic damage. And that is good and well for enemies in areas of the game where the enemies don't have high magic resistance. But we are going to be going into the Duke's Archives, and in that area, the enemies have pretty high magic resistance. So we need an alternative method of doing damage. So I've decided to take this Gargoyle's Halberd, which you should have in your inventory. You should have at least one in your inventory by now. It is a guaranteed drop from one of the two gargoyles in Anor Londo. And I've decided to turn it into a lightning weapon. Now, in order to make a lightning weapon, first you must take the halberd and you have to upgrade it to a +5 with Titanite shards. Then you have to give the large ember to Andre, and that will allow him to modify the +5 weapons into +6 using large shards. And then again, using large shards, you can take weapons up to a +10. Once you have a +10 weapon, you can turn that weapon into a lightning weapon. And Andre will not be able to do that, but the giant blacksmith in Anor Londo will be able to do that. So here we are. We've taken the Gargoyle's Halberd up to a +10, and now we're going to go turn it into an elemental weapon. Now, if you're wondering why it is that I won't go ahead and just continue upgrading via the normal path, the reason I'm not going to do that is because I have very, very low strength and dexterity. It's going to stay at 16 and 12, and I'm not going to add any more strength or dexterity to this build. So if I make a normal weapon, it's not going to do a lot of damage because I won't have the dexterity or the strength to scale and to increase the normal damage that the weapon can do. So instead, what I've decided to do is make a lightning weapon, and it turns out that the Gargoyle's Halberd, I think, is the strongest, makes for the strongest elemental weapons. It will make a very, very strong lightning weapon, and it will make an even stronger chaos weapon. That's a fire weapon that scales with your humanity. So I've decided to make a lightning weapon because I have the giant blacksmith available right here, and using Titanite chunks, he can take my plus 10 normal weapon and he can bring it to a plus 1 lightning, and you can take that all the way up to a plus 4 lightning. I'm not going to have enough chunks to do that in this episode, but we will eventually be doing that. And with a Titanite slab, you can actually take your plus 4 lightning weapon to a plus 5 and complete its upgrade. So we will be doing that, but I wanted to make a complementary weapon so that we are able to deal lightning damage as well as magic damage. And because the Gargoyle's Halberd makes for such a strong elemental weapon, because it in its lightning form, it does half of its damage as lightning and half as physical, and it's pretty high. I decided to make a Gargoyle's Halberd, a lightning Gargoyle's Halberd. Alright, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is, if you notice at the beginning of the episode, Big Hat Logan was sitting right next to his apprentice, but you could see that he is no longer here. After you you obtain the Lord Vessel, you can come and you can talk to Logan, and he will, after you talk to him, he will tell you that, he will ask you, oh, you're leaving, and he'll say, I plan on leaving myself. And what's going to happen is, when you travel in and out of this area a couple of times, and I don't even think you need to place the Lord Vessel first in order for him to leave. But anyway, after you've talked to him a couple of times, he will be gone. He will leave. Now, he is going to sell some very, very high level versions, some very, very high level spells. So we are going to make sure that that we find him and that he buys his spells. But when he leaves, his apprentice has access to copies of the same spells that Logan sold. So you saw me purchase another copy of Soul Spear from his apprentice, and Soul Spear is a very good weapon. So now we have another copy of it. So we just needed to make sure that Big Hat Logan left, and as soon as he leaves, copies of his spells can be purchased from his apprentice. You can also get homing soul mass as well, but we don't have use for 2 homing soul masses. We'll probably end up buying it later on, but we certainly have use for another soul spear. All right, so that's been a little bit about farming in Anor Londo, or at least how I like to do it, and also a little bit about upgrading weapons. I guess upgrading lightning weapons. And now the last part of this video, we're gonna take revenge on Lautrec, and he assassinated, or tried to assassinate, the Firekeeper in Fireling Shrine, Anastasia. And we put the Black Eye Orb in our inventory, and when we came to the courtyard in the castle, we were given the option to invade Knight Lautrec's world. And it's interesting, if you notice, Lautrec is wearing a ring. I believe it's the Slumbering Dragon ring, and that ring will prevent your footsteps from making any noise. So it's almost as if he was waiting for us to invade, and he had put on that ring so that he was going to try to sneak up on us if we didn't hear his footsteps. But I think that's kind of it's interesting because if you're familiar with PvP, that is, I don't want to say common, but that is a technique that many players use, they'll put on the slumbering dragon crest ring, or they'll put on the ring of fog, and that will make them less visible, less easy to find, and they'll try to sneak up on you. All right, so we did kill Lautrec, and because we are invading, it doesn't really matter that we died. The only thing that matters is that we killed the host of the world, who happened to be Lautrec. So when we did that, we scored souls, and we also scored a ring of favor and protection. Now this is one of the strongest rings in the game because it will increase your endurance and your vitality by 20%. And what's really interesting about the ring of favor and protection, the FAP ring, is that if your endurance is at 40, your stamina will stop increasing. You can take your endurance up to 41. Your equipment load, your carrying capacity will increase, but your stamina will not increase past 40 endurance. That is, unless you have the Ring of Favor and Protection. With the Ring of Favor and Protection equipped, your stamina will go up 20% as well, or will increase along with endurance. So this is an important item, especially in PvP, because endurance not only allows you to carry more weight, but it also allows you to swing your weapon, using up less stamina. So essentially, you can swing your weapon more times. And in PvP, if you can swing your weapon more times than your opponent, in some cases that could mean the difference between winning or losing the duel. All right, so we went back to the that bonfire, and you saw me pick up Lautrec's armor, which is the set of favor. I believe it's called a set of favor, and it's got a pretty cool design in front of it. I actually like the brass set better than Lautrec set, especially after the last download patch. It was one of the few items that was actually improved. They increased the poise that the brass set has, so now it has the same poise as Lautrec set. So I actually happen to like the brass set a little bit better. All right, and then you saw me go back to Anastasia and revive her, and that makes this bonfire available to us. And since we are in human form, we're going to go ahead and we're going to kindle it. And that is going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next video, we're going to go into New Londo. This is the Tech Phantom signing off.